Well, thank you so much for having me on your program today. It's a great opportunity to be with you. Look, we had a great visit. The secretary met with Prime Minister Soudani when he was here. Soudani, his delegation also went to the White House for meetings, and I believe at the State Department as well. So this was really a meetings here while he was here in Washington, D.C., to further deepen the relationship between the United States and Iraq. And as you know, with the Iraqi government, we value that relationship. Some of our forces are in Iraq right now. They're there as part of the mission to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS. And so this is an incredibly valuable partnership and something that we place not only a lot of value on, but it's a relationship that the secretary felt it was very important for him to meet directly with Soudani and express his thanks and gratitude, not only for housing our forces within Iraq, but for the ongoing work and the ongoing goals of regional stability within the region in the Middle East. They spoke on a range of different issues, to include the Higher Military Commission, which, as you know, is including ongoing working groups. General Kurilla actually just chaired a principals meeting last week. That's the Central Command commander. He chaired a principals meeting last week. And then, of course, these working group meetings continue. And one of the things that was discussed in the meeting with the secretary was the threat of ISIS. That's one of the conditions that the HMC is looking at, the threat of ISIS, the operational environment, and of course, evaluating the strength and resiliency of the Iraqi security forces. So of course, those were all things that came up during the meeting. And of course, the other things that were touched on was making sure that we are getting humanitarian aid into Gaza, to making sure that the Palestinian people are getting what they need. We know that the humanitarian situation is dire in Gaza, and that's what the U.S. is doing, everything that we can to help to make sure that humanitarian aid is getting in. And so that's something that was also discussed at the meeting with the secretary. Yes, that of course came up, and that's something that we've requested in our FY25 budget request to Congress, is additional funding so that we can continue to train and equip Iraqi security forces who are still on the front lines and fighting that fight. While ISIS looks a little different than it did in 2014, the ISIS still remains a threat, but our relationship with the Iraqi security forces, with the Iraqi government, as the threat of ISIS has changed, we're evaluating how our relationship with the Iraqis can further deepen into a bilateral security cooperation agreement. So that was certainly discussed. The secretary is very as you know, he's a former Central Command commander. He's spent a lot of time in Iraq, has deep relationships there. So, of course, we value the relationship that we have with the Iraqi security forces and want to see them successful as they continue not only in the enduring and lasting defeat of ISIS, but ensuring regional stability. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is exactly what we are seeing in the region, is these Iranian-backed militant groups attacking our forces, attacking the Iraqi security forces in the Kurdistan region and elsewhere. And so Prime Minister Soudani, Secretary Austin, that was one of the things that they certainly discussed, the threat of Iran and the threat that these IRGC-backed militias pose on our forces. And that's really what that meeting was about, to talk through the coordination and cooperation between our forces. And we are really knitted together when it comes to cooperation. In fact, Iraq has been essential, and not only an essential partner in the enduring defeat of ISIS mission, but ensuring that our forces, our U.S. forces, are safe. So I'm not going to get into too many specifics, as you can appreciate, on different types of capabilities that was discussed. But of course, we're always looking at how we can strengthen our air defense systems as we do continue to see threats from IRGC-backed groups. Look, I'm just not going to get into more specifics from the meeting, but what I can tell you is that we're committed to training and equipping the Iraqi forces in whatever they need, but I'm just not going to speak to more specific capabilities right now. Well, the mission has certainly evolved as the threat of ISIS has changed. So that means our relationship with the Iraqi security forces is changing as well, and with the government of Iraq. And that's okay. That's what these higher military commission working group meetings are doing, to assess what does our presence look like in Iraq, and how can we not only ensure that enduring defeat of ISIS, but how can we further deepen our bilateral security cooperation. The Iraqi government, the government of the United States, I think this is a very important partnership in the region. It's one that other governments look to in the region to ensure regional security as well. Again, that's what these higher military commission meetings are all about. It's discussing through these working groups what the future and partnerships look like. But I certainly don't have any announcement to make on any changes to our force posture within Iraq. Well, I think what you're asking is about attacks on our forces, and the president has been very clear, and the secretary has been very clear. We're not going to tolerate those attacks. We had seen a pretty consistent barrage since about October 17th, and then those attacks did stop earlier this year in February. Look, we have to remember the reason why our forces are in places like Iraq, in places like Syria, is to ensure that ISIS can never regain the strength that it had back in 2014. And so our forces are focused on that, and we certainly value the partnership with the Iraqi security forces. Again, the HMC, the working group meetings, they're evaluating the conditions for multiple different things, not only for what equities the department has, but other parts of the interagency. And again, those conditions that I laid out at the beginning, the threat of ISIS, the operational environment, the future of the Iraqi security forces, these are all things that are being discussed in these HMC working groups right now. I don't have any announcements to make on the next date. Again, our sides continue to talk through the HMC. We value these working groups. They're ongoing, but I just don't have the next date for you right now. Well, we're seeing the Iraqi security forces do tremendous work every single day, ensuring security of their citizens, working with our U.S. forces to ensure that the defeat of ISIS remains and is, contained, that ISIS is contained and can never regain the strength that it once had 10 years ago. So, for the Iraqi security forces capabilities, we think they are doing a tremendous job. We're committed to continuing to train and equip them. But again, this is an ongoing, valued relationship that we have with the Iraqi government and their security forces. Well, look, I can't speak for the Iraqi government. I'm here as a representative of the Department of Defense. But what I can tell you is that Iraq and the security forces there certainly understand the threat that groups like or Iranian-backed groups pose to our forces. We've seen attacks on our forces before, and we have welcomed the partnership with the ISF to repel those attacks, to go after those people responsible for attacking our forces. Look, we certainly understand the dynamics, the tensions in the region are high. As we have said many times from this building and from other places across this administration, we don't want to see a regional war. We don't want to see this conflict broaden out. And the United States does not seek a war with Iran. And so it's important to remember that here, on behalf of this building and the United States, we are urging de-escalation. That's something that we continue to do. That's something that the Secretary and Prime Minister Soudani discussed as well. And so we really do want to see a de-escalation of tensions. That is a decision that the Israeli government has to make. I believe the War Cabinet, I know they met yesterday. I believe they're meeting again today. That's a sovereign decision that Israel would have to make in its calculations. Look, I'm just not going to get into hypotheticals. Again, that's really a question that should be posed to the Israeli government. What I can tell you is what the president has said, is that we're committed to Israel's self-defense. You saw us with a coalition of other countries support Israel on Saturday when Iran launched over 300 different types of ammunition towards Israel, trying to inflict as much damage as possible, trying to kill innocent civilians. You saw the United States and the IDF work together, along with the UK and France and other partners, work to repel those attacks against Iran. But when it comes to any actions that Israel might take, I would just have to refer you to the Israelis to speak to that.